Food is fuel for your body, your mind, and definitely your sport. But let's face it, nutrition is confusing, and the expectations on girls and women to be thin and have a six-pack are exhausting. If you've ever been frustrated with your body, confused about nutrition, obsessed with eating healthy, or guilty when you don't, underate, overate, or overtrained, and overwhelmed with all the pressure, then this podcast is for you. Nutrition can be easy, you can take control of it, but it might start with letting go of control by asking for help and making a change. I'm Lindsay Elizabeth Cortez, sports dietitian and owner of Rise Up Nutrition, where I empower female athletes to overcome nutrition concerns and perform at their highest level, to stop being confused by all the mixed or harmful messages, and finally have confidence in your body as a fierce, fit, and fueled female athlete. Hi, fans of the Female Athlete Nutrition Podcast. It's Lindsay Cortez, your host and registered sports dietitian. I'm so excited for you to listen to my conversation today with Molly Hurford. She is a longtime endurance sports journalist and podcaster, as well as the author of nearly a dozen cycling-related books. She's the co-host of Consummate Athlete podcast, the founder of Strong Girl Publishing, and regularly writes for outlets like Bicycling, Runner's World, Canadian Cycling, and more. She's a little obsessed with getting people, especially girls and women, psyched on adventure and being outside. I think you'll hear through our conversation how psyched I was talking with her. She's just somebody I really connected with, and just our passion for girls in sport and like sports and just the reason behind it is just something I loved my conversation with Molly. So I really hope you did too. And there's so many ways this conversation could have gone, between her being a podcast host and a run coach. A little bit more about her. She's an RRCA run coach, a 200-hour yoga teacher training, certified NCCP cycling coach, precision nutrition level 1, and fast and female expert ambassador. She does so much in just the realm of fitness, and she's written so much. You can go on her website and see like all the articles that she's written about, many of them nutrition related or about fitness, cycling. And again, over a dozen books that she's published, and we chat briefly about a few of them, and you can just see kind of the wide range of topics. And yet a wide range in a very niched thing, right? A very niche, like focusing on a lot on cycling and just athletes and girl athletes. So I really hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. She's somebody you're definitely going to want to check out. Maybe tune into Consummate Athlete. Go to consummateathlete.com. Definitely read her books. If you are a young athlete yourself or a parent of a young athlete, lots of books to choose from. Head to stronggirlpublishing.com to get your hands on some of those books. Real quick, before we dive into the episode, I want to remind you that as a podcast host and a dietitian, and you being a listener of me, I do have some deals and discounts. And by making a small commission, by being affiliates for some brands and products that I really care about, is what helps keep this podcast going. If you would like to give a donation to keep this podcast going, you can head to patreon.com/female athlete nutrition, and you can give a donation of $1 a month or $10 a month just to help keep this podcast going. We also mention on the podcast today the need of good fitting sports bras intended for the mom athlete. You can head to www.jenandkerry.com, JENANDKERI.com. Use the code RISEUP10 for $10 off of an amazing nursing sports bra for mom athletes. We also chat briefly on the podcast about how difficult it is to be a high school athlete. Sometimes you have good intentions to fuel, but your schedule is just crazy. And that is one reason why I really like Orgain nutrition shakes. They have ready-to-drink nutritional shakes, protein shakes, and some bars as well. You can get 30% off your first order using the code RISEUP30. You can head to Orgain.com, ORGAIN.com. Use that code RISEUP30 for 30% off. Any future orders, you can use the code OA2203. All of this is included in the show notes. But yeah, one of the reasons that I love Orgain is because of their ready-to-drink nutrition shakes. I just feel like it's better than just a protein shake. It's got some carbohydrates in there. It's got some fats. And so great for an athlete of any age, but definitely those busy athletes, including our high school or youth athletes that are just running from school to after-school activities to practice to homework, and we're running out of time. You can easily throw these options or gain options in your bag. So use that code RISEUP30. And without further ado, here's Molly. Molly, thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun. I love talking about everything that you're into, honestly.
Yes, we're going to have a fun time. And for our listeners, both Molly and I started this conversation kind of apologizing for our location as I'm recording in a closet right now. But, Molly's just that type of cool lady who goes with the flow, and she gets stuff done no matter the situation. So I'm really excited.
You say that as though I'm not recording out of my van. So we're very much in the same boat. Yeah. So I live in Canada most of the time, but then in the winter, I am not a Canadian originally. So for me, it is very cold up there. So I'm like, absolutely not. We need to be somewhere warm for a while. So hence being in the van a little further south. Yeah.
Recording in a van, recording in a closet, and two very successful women here.
Exactly.
We got it going on.
Exactly. You made the excellent point of like getting stuff done. And I really do think, especially with podcasts, like it could not be more true. Like it's not going to be a perfect situation. Most of us do not have fancy studios that we're doing this out of. We're just making it happen because we're very passionate about our topics.
Absolutely. And this might be like really a stretch connecting dots here, but I'm just catching a vibe on your personality. How much do you feel like growing up as an athlete allows you to be that type of person who can like roll with the punches, make it work under whatever situation, whatever cards you're dealt? Like, do you feel that being a lifelong athlete has really shaped your personality beyond just like,
ooh,
I do sports?
I completely get where you're coming from. So here's the wacky thing, though, is that I am not a lifelong athlete. I was the least athletic kid on the entire planet. I once pretended to faint to avoid running the mile in gym class. Like that is the level of non-athletic I was. I once cried until my mother took me home from the one t-ball practice she ever tried to take me to. So total non-athlete. However, we do know studies suggest that I think it's like 90% of women who have C-suite positions played sports in high school, played sports in elementary school. It's a huge percentage of these women that have gone from like playing sports as a kid to doing these amazing things. So I would say I managed to get through to where I am despite my lack of athleticism. That said, I always say that I wasn't athletic as a kid, but he was like, I hunted with my dad. I surfed because I was a teenager when Blue Crush came out. I was still an outdoorsy kid. So I think that's probably very much my like rolling with the punches and just kind of being able to do work out of wherever. And I mean, I was the kid that, I lived in New Jersey, so I was able to go into like New York City and Philadelphia. So I was going to like, punk rock shows when I was a teenager and, kind of doing that on my own and figuring that stuff out. So I think I had a bit of like a wild upbringing that way. So I think I forged my own very weird path and then found sport in college. My freshman year, I always say my RA, my freshman year, was pretty cute and he did Ironman triathlons. So I was like, okay, I'll do an Ironman.
Great reason to get into sports. Yes.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
Ironman of all things, too.
I know. Like, oh, okay, sure. Why not? Did not get the guy, but found it clearly a lifelong passion at this point for sport, and did eventually get a guy.
Yeah, so, the best guy.
The best guy.
Eventually the best guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and just cracking up, but I probably would have cried at a t-ball practice too. That was like ball sports were not my thing when I was younger. Horrific for me personally. as well. But just like, yeah, you being an outdoorsy and adventurous girl. And then, when you did pick up sport, just all the opportunities that it has, led you to in your career and which we're going to get into shortly. And that's something that you and I both love about sport is not just the participation and the thrill of the competition, which is awesome, but it's really the opportunities that it can create. And as you mentioned, 90% of, can you repeat that? C-suite, can you expand upon that?
Yep.
Just expand.
Yeah. So I'm probably getting the stat like slightly wrong, but I think it is right around 90% of women who are in C-suite. So, CEO, COO, all of those positions played a sport in elementary school and high school. So they've been athletes their whole lives.
Yeah.
So it really is that they know how to get to the finish line. They know how to lead a team. They have all of this stuff. And that's, I think, when we're kids, we just don't really get kind of told like, oh, here's all of these like bonuses that you get from playing sport. We're just kind of playing it because the cool kids are playing, dodgeball or basketball or whatever. So we do it. It doesn't really occur to us that there's all of these like other intrinsic values that we learn through sport as kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, teamwork, goal setting, just kind of commitment to a process, maybe seeing a bigger vision.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's one reason, I'm still personally so passionate about what I do as a dietitian for female athletes is, yes, I love food and I love like achieving optimal performance, but it's about like, how can we stay in sport because of how important it is to stay in sport for your life? Like, I'm here now as am I middle-aged? I don't know.
We're not going to
talk about age. Okay. I'm not young anymore. I've got children and I still call myself an athlete, not because I'm like hanging on to a past identity, but because of what it gives me to give back to myself, to be a role model for my children, to invest in myself, to have me, like, there's just so much to it in life, right? Mm-hmm. And so I want to jump into, there's so much I want to talk about with you personally and your career, but recently, you are an author, and recently you established Strong Girl Publishing. And please tell us more about that and its amazing mission.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, when I started Strong Girl Publishing, it was sort of as a response to two things. First, I've had a middle grade series called The Shred Girls that I've had for a few years now. So it's all about girls on bikes. I always say picture Babysitter's Club or like Nancy Drew, but it's bikes, not babysitting or mysteries.
Yeah.
So I've had that for a while. And along the lines, I just kept hearing from editors and publishers that girls in sport don't sell, especially for middle grade and young adult. So you write a book about girls in sport and there's just not really a wide market for it. There are, if you look at like kids' books, like children's books, you do see girls playing sports in them, but then it kind of just stops. And I think that's really correlated to the fact that girls drop out of sport right around that middle grade age. So it's really like as they're heading into puberty, they drop out of sport for a multitude of reasons. A lot of it is like not really feeling like they belong in it, feeling, uncomfortable with their bodies changing as they hit puberty, feeling honestly, and this was where I kind of had my issues as a kid, feeling like the pressure to lean into one identity versus another. So I think for girls, it's this much stronger, like, I'm a bookworm, therefore I cannot be an athlete, or I'm a jock, so I can't be on the newspaper and be an editor. Like, you kind of had to like pick one. You had to pick a lane by the time you hit like those preteen years.
Yeah.
Boys, I don't think have quite as much tied up in that. This is as my personal experience and what I've seen, but we have to say 7 in 10 girls who drop out of sports during puberty say they don't feel like they belong in the sport. By the age of 14, girls are dropping out of sport at 2 times the rate that boys are dropping out. COVID actually made those numbers go even higher because they had a year off of sport and so many girls just never came back.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I was seeing as I was doing sort of some of the research on this when I was working on the Shred Girls books was that studies found that girls embrace more traditionally, and I use air quotes around the word boy activities, when presented with images that show other girls engaging in them. So if we see, like, I mean, actually, you can kind of even just look back, look at surfing. When Blue Crush came out, how many girls took up surfing? When Bend It Like Beckham came out, how many girls took up soccer? You know,
Right.
we're now seeing the US women's soccer team. How many little girls are playing soccer? And
Yeah.
I think the same can be true for any sport. So that's where I kind of started thinking about writing fiction around biking for girls who may not see themselves in cycling, because bikes are fantastic. Like, it's super fun, but it's also, you know, it gives you the freedom and the sense of like autonomy, because now you can actually get yourself from point A to point B in a really effective manner. It's a very much a lifestyle sport compared to, not that you can't play soccer for the rest of your life, but cycling you can take with you, you know, forever. Like, you can be 90 and still pedaling along. So it's actually kind of just one of the best like individual sports to get into that like has a real lifelong ramification. It's also just kind of what I got started in, so I'm personally very passionate about it and love it.
Yeah.
But so I started the Shred Girls books, and then with them, I was talking to a lot of different young women in cycling, in other sports, and the number of times I got asked, like, how do I get a book deal? How do I write a book? Because all of these young athletes had these ideas and they had so much creativity. But, you know, getting a book deal or self-publishing, those are both very difficult roads.
Right.
Neither is like a great solution, especially if you're someone who's still trying to, you know, follow your athletic dreams. So I kind of started thinking about like, there has to be this like middle ground, or like a way I can do something about this, you know, while continuing to write the books that I love. So that's where the idea for Strong Girl Publishing was born, actually pretty much a year ago, like almost, I would say, on the nose today.
Wow.
As we're recording, we're pretty much
Weird.
like, it took me like, the idea just kind of hit me on a run. And from there, I just went on, I was like putting together like a deck and just like, how could this work? And what would this look like? And, you know, what do I need to learn to figure this out? Because I had books traditionally published, I'd self-published books. So I sort of knew how both worked. I've laid out magazines. I know how that works. I've, you know, run my Consummate Athlete website for several years. So I know how websites work. So in my head, I was like, okay, I can do all of these things. Sure. Why not?
You can do it.
I can do it. I can, yeah. Women
Yes.
can do anything. So
Yeah.
I reached back out to two of the young women that I'd recently talked to and said, like, hey, if I start this, you know, would you be interested in actually, like, do you actually have books that you want to put out? Which is how I ended up with my first product was actually a planner by a Canadian downhiller, Rachel Peugeot, who made these really cute little like best day ever planners and like a back to school planner and like an annual planner for 2024.
Yeah, I see them on the website.
They're
Yeah.
so cute. Oh my gosh, I love
Very
them.
cool.
And then Mackenzie Myatt, another Canadian cross country racer, she came out with this beautiful book of poetry. It's so like gorgeously designed. And then I had just finished writing my book, The Strong Girl, which is my 1870s historical fiction for middle grade about a girl that runs away to join the circus, based on a true story of.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's like the coolest part about that, which is a whole other conversation. But anyway, so yeah, Strong Girl Publishing launched. We've had a few books come out so far. We have another 3 coming out this year. We just signed a new author, Misha Powell, who is a Canadian Olympian and a 400-meter runner. So I was very excited to branch out from cycling. We're working on a memoir from her. So yeah, it's just been super cool getting to not just tell the stories of these women cyclists and women runners and other women athletes, but also to be creating content that hopefully is reaching girls who aren't necessarily thinking of themselves as athletes, who aren't really seeing themselves in sport. Because, you know, I didn't see it, but like I read the Babysitters Club books. I babysat. Babysitting sucks. Like, apologies to your nanny. But like babysitting is inherently very boring. But I did it because a book told me to.
And difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Difficult.
A book made it seem super cool. So I was like, okay, I'm totally down for earning, you know, $2 an hour back in like 1998. Like, this is worth it.
Yeah.
But like, what if I had read a book about bikes and been like, I 100% would have been convinced if I saw it in a book and it seemed cool. I'd be like, absolutely. So it would have.
When I can totally see this like going both ways, right? Of like, so the girl who is the bookworm is being opened up to like, sports, competition,
Hmm.
adventure. And so the bookworm might be able to explore a different identity. And vice versa, the girl who's, is the athlete or the sport or the jock is encouraged to read. And we know how
Hmm.
wonderful reading is for our brain. And we're going to get off social media and we're going to read a book and we're going to
Hmm.
learn and we're going to engage in a story and like benefits both ways for all types of people, all types of girls.
Exactly. The number of parents that I hear from that are like, my daughter was not a reader and she has not gotten up. Like I was just at a NICA, so the National like High School Mountain Biking Association. I was at their Eastern Regionals, and there was a girl who got one of the Shred Girls books, and then she was just like sitting in the girls riding together grit tent next to me, and I could just see her just like reading it for hours. And her mom came up and she's like, she has literally never sat and read a book. And she's in the middle of this thing where she could be hanging out with her friends and she is reading right now. And she was so excited about it. Like, yes, I'm turning these athletes into bookworms too. It's fantastic.
Well, yeah, and I can relate to that. I didn't like reading growing up. Like I remember in 5th grade trying to read Harry Potter and I just like couldn't. And I could not. As an adult, I actually really I have an appreciation for the Harry Potter series now, but I could not as a kid. The only books the only books I could read as a kid were, oh my gosh, I forget what the series was called, but basically American historical fiction about girls. Like there was a girl who did the Oregon Trail, or like a girl working in the factories during the Industrial Revolution, about young girls, American historical fiction, who like overcame a big adventure or obstacle. Those were the only books I could read and enjoy.
Love it. Okay, well, obviously, I'm sending you a copy of The Strong Girl after this because I think it would be very much up your alley. So, the other really sneaky part, and this really leads into what you do, and a big part of what you talk about, is in all of the books, not only do I have little bits about like how to jump your bike, or how to do this kind of like cycling
Oh,
training.
cool.
It's very like subtly in there. It's not like it's not a pull out of like training tips. It's more like, oh, their coach is telling them, when you're going over a jump, what you really want is to try to get the feeling of like your ponytail going up in the air. And like, that's
Hmm.
the kind of lift we're looking for. But I also sneak in stuff like they meditate in book 2 and talk about like mindfulness practices, and
Awesome.
eating is actually a huge part of what I talk about in the book. Like if you pulled out the amount of food descriptions and like meal descriptions and talking about like, oh, we have to go do a bike race. Like, okay, what's our breakfast look like? It's
Oh,
probably
my heart
like
just melted.
it's probably like over 1,000 words of the 70,000 word book is just
Yeah.
food descriptions, because I think it's so important to even just kind of subtly be influencing like young women athletes as like, this is like the appropriate amount of food to be taking in for the work that we're doing, and it's a lot more than you probably think it is.
You honestly, Molly, I just like have tears in my eyes now because I can't thank you enough for including that into your books.
It was just such an
That
important
is
thing.
so important. It is. It's so important. And first of all, it's real. You need to eat before practice. You need to eat like it's just real, but it's something that like if we leave it out, it contributes to the problem that exists in our young girls today, which is this fear of food, this fear of weight gain, this I don't need that, or, well, my girlfriend who's not an athlete doesn't eat as much as me, so I'm not, and it's just like, so ignoring it is kind of part of the problem, and you put it in there. You didn't ignore it. I'm so grateful to you.
Oh my
So
gosh.
grateful. That is so needed.
It was just such an important thing, and I realized it a few years ago as I was coaching cross country, just like volunteering with a local high school, and I in my head I kind of assumed after like doing this is probably a thing that you have happened to you too, where you've been doing this for so long that you sort of just have this baseline assumption of the nutrition knowledge that people have. Or I'm sure, actually, given your profession, I'm sure you now realize that's not a thing. I did not realize that that was not a
But
thing.
sometimes I do get stuck in my own bubble a little bit, and then I like step outside of it and I'm like, oh crap, this problem still exists. Yeah.
Yeah, where I'm like, oh, of course everyone knows that like you need to eat like a fairly carb heavy meal
Yeah.
like the night before a race and then the morning of a race. But then I'd be getting to, practice, and I'd hear girls be like, oh, I, skipped lunch today because I had to go. And to be fair, high school seems like a nightmare
It
for young
is.
girls. Like I completely understand why they are getting to practice completely underfueled. Their lunch is at like 9:30 in the morning, and there's no time to eat snacks during the rest of the day. Like, what are they supposed to do? Or, they do have a lunch period, but they need to go do all of these other extra things. There's so much pressure on high schoolers. So to be fair, I completely understand where they're coming from, but they'd be showing up to practice completely underfueled. They'd show up to race day and I'd be like, oh, what's pre-race breakfast? Like expecting it to be like, oh, I brought this bagel sandwich and I'm really excited about it. And they'd be like, I have these 5 strawberries and 10 almonds. And I was like, I thought the 10 almond thing went out back in 2005. I thought we were done with that. I thought we left that behind. But no, it is alive and well.
It is. Yeah. Well, and it's because then, you finally do teach that group of girls they're doing well, and then they move on and grow up, and you've got the new wave that still doesn't know. And so it's always needed. The nutrition education is always needed.
Yeah. And doesn't happen. In my head, I was like, oh, they learn this in health class. Surely I learned this in high school. This seems obvious. And then I realize now, I'm like, oh, they absolutely do not.
They don't.
Yeah.
Most of their learning is probably through about food is more so through social media. And that's not a good place for it. There's too many mixed and toxic messages.
Oh, so many mixed messages. Like I can understand how they would have so much confusion about it. And then even their parents, right? Like it's not intentional, but their parents are also getting all of these mixed messages from the diet culture that they grew up with and the diet culture that they're currently in. I do a lot of actually writing for True Sport, which is USADA's youth sport arm. So I'm talking to a lot of experts about basically like nutrition for teen athletes and stuff, which has been the coolest job because I get to, talk to all of these people and really get a lot of the nuances that I didn't necessarily know. But yeah, the number of parents that, they're on a keto diet or a low carb diet. So therefore their kid either, sees that and wants to emulate it, or they simply just don't have access to the food that they want to eat because
they need.
Yeah, exactly. Like how many times do parents do pantry cleanouts to like clean up their eating, but now their poor athlete kid is like, but I needed those pretzels. I'm very hungry right now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All around, like there's just so much need for better nutrition education. And so I guess going back to the fact that like you've experienced that as a coach, you're as an athlete, 2 as a coach, and you're seeing the need for that. And so now as, writing that in your own books, including that in because you can see the importance of it. It's just amazing.
And I think it's a sneaky way, right? Like I come back to, I remember reading The Babysitter's Club and I can still tell you what Claudia Kishi was wearing in certain books because the descriptions were fantastic. I can tell you about, the different dinners that they ate in the Harry Potter books because they're described so wonderfully, like the meals in the Great Hall. So that kind of stuff sticks with you. So I'm kind of like, if I can just get that like sneaking into their brain as like, ooh, a big bowl of granola with some yogurt and berries does sound good. Then I've done my job.
Well, the other thing I love about that, as a sports dietitian, one of my slogans is like food is fuel, right? But I, as a person, believe that food is so much more than that. And when you can tie it to a memory or give it meaning, and I can see that in a book, like even just how you, again, although I admitted I was not a Harry Potter reader, just like tying a meal to like the Great Hall and that makes it magnificent and wonderful and special, then you have that feeling as you go into that meal. It's not, oh, I'm eating this as fuel. It's, oh, I'm eating this magnificent, wonderful, special thing before the big event that's going to happen or whatever. It brings meaning to it. And that's something I love about food. When I think there's a certain meal that I'm like, oh, that food gives me comfort, or that one reminds me of this memory I had, or like, oh, that's what I ate when I went to a really fancy dinner. Like it just tying meaning to your food, a positive like emotion, can really help you connect with it, which makes you want to eat it and enjoy eating it more than just, oh, I'm doing this as fuel, which is a good reason. Food as fuel is a good reason. But when you can like add more meaning to it, I think that's even better. So I love the storytelling, that I'm sure you build. It's not just she ate a waffle and then ran a race. You're like really describing it more.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny because, as I interview athletes and I, do that a fair bit, then, they can all describe what their pre-race dinner is, what their pre-race breakfast is, what their rituals are around that. And I think I read those, I hear those, and I'm like, ooh, that does sound good. And I can picture myself, sitting and sipping my cup of coffee and like eating my oatmeal and like steam is coming out of the bowl. And I'm like, doing my mindful like meditation about how visualization of how the race is going to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it creates those moments. And I think
Yeah.
that's what makes it become like ingrained in, this is the habit that I have. Even if the girl next to me
Mhm.
isn't eating, I'm still going to do it because now it's my thing.
It's your thing. Yeah. And I think that's something I try and talk to my clients about that a lot too, is like, I don't want us to just check the box, check had breakfast, check did pre-race meal. And sometimes we have to.
Sure.
Sometimes you do. But when you make it your thing, it's like, it's not just checking the box. It's like, this is what I do. This is what I enjoy. This is who I am. This is how I live, And I hope that makes sense. It's something that makes sense once you do it. Once it is who you are and what you do, it just makes sense.
Exactly.
Because I can't tell you how many conversations I have with clients like talking about pre-race meals, like, oh, I'm too nervous, I can't eat. And I'm like, oh, that's funny because for me, like eating something pre-race might actually calm my stomach because it is a ritual. It's like, this is what I've envisioned. This is what I look forward to. This is my piece of, oh, I'm getting confidence that I eat this and I'm going to be fueled. And I know it's something that's going to be good for my tummy and I have my me time. And it just sets you everything from fuel, body, mind, preparation, confidence, like sets you up for success.
Exactly. Yeah. It's funny. I always think back, I was doing one talk for girls and we were talking about, race day and nutrition and all that stuff. And a lot of the parents were there and they were like, oh, well, what do you eat pre-race? And I was like, well, first of all, like, let's remember that this is all individual and, you've got to find your own thing. But I'm like, to be honest, I eat a bagel and drink a can of Mountain Dew. And the gasps, like the mothers looked appalled at that. I mean, I run 100 milers. Like, let's be clear. This is not like I'm going to be out all day.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm eating a pretty hefty, like carb heavy, caffeine high thing. We're not saying that this is like what you should eat every day of the week. But it was so funny because you could tell, like, even though we're talking about race day, when they need that carbohydrate, like the parents just could not comprehend that was like, I was like, no, that's rocket fuel. Like that is what is like getting me through this race. So
and it's something like there's in society today. So I'm going to go on a little tangent, but just something that's like continues to bother me is like the people who then, okay, I understand I need carbs for performance, but then they're like cooking up their sweet potatoes before breakfast and making these huge oatmeal bowls, which is great. I love sweet potatoes and oatmeals, but it's like, no, but it's also okay just to have a white bagel and a Mountain Dew. Like carbs are carbs. At this stage in the game here, carbs are carbs. Like you just need to get the carbs in before practice. And there's still, there's different layers, right? It's like the anti-carb people and then the, okay, carbs are good, but only the quote good carbs. And then there's that, okay, I finally accepted all and any carbs, just whatever carbs I'm craving, whichever ones I like, whatever's easiest, whatever works. That's all I need. Right?
Exactly.
The stages of carb acceptance.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. You're so right. Yeah.
I also, sorry, I'm just having so much fun with this conversation. Man, Mountain Dew, I haven't had that in a while.
I know. It's embarrassing. This is like the most embarrassing thing about me. And I feel like I've maybe said it on like a trail running podcast where, it's trail running. We accept this about each other. But no, I grew up on it because I mean, I'm a child of the late 80s. And apparently, as a family legend goes, I was once crying in a supermarket when I was like an infant, and my mom didn't have anything other than a Mountain Dew that she was drinking, so she gave me some of it, and I instantly shut up. So it became this like kind of a go-to for her after that, for whenever I was acting up and like she really needed to calm me down.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. So when I say I was not athletic, I also drank like probably 2 liters of Mountain Dew a day through most of my like teen years. So
wow.
The fact that I've like been able to reel it in where I don't really drink it anymore except on race days is I feel like my proudest thing that I managed to like quit that. But yeah, I had a lot to learn about nutrition. This is not like I, was naturally like, I got into sport and now I know exactly what I should do, because I came, you're probably similar here. When I was getting into triathlon in like the mid aughts, I would say, The triathlete magazine articles, bicycling magazine articles, they were big on like the what the pros eat in a day
Oh,
things.
yeah.
And I don't know if you recall those, but let me see if I can remember. It was like, well, I wake up, I do a, 7 mile swim. Then I come, I have like a little bit of Gatorade, and then I come home. I have my bowl of oatmeal with berries, no sugar, just berries. It's very sweet
Just
that
oatmeal
way.
and
Just
berries.
oatmeal
Yeah.
and berries. Yes, very, very nice. Then I do a 17-hour bike. Then I,
Oh
I
my
have my
gosh.
my salad with some grilled chicken on top, maybe a little bit of brown rice if I'm feeling, very
Yeah.
hungry from that bike ride. And then I do just a quick strength training routine. Then it's dinner time, and I have my grilled fish now with my vegetables, maybe some wild rice on this one. And then as a treat, I have my one square of dark chocolate. Who
Dark,
eats
extra dark.
extra dark? Who eats that? Who does that?
Right.
Actually, my husband does
Right.
that, to be honest. It's very annoying. I'm like, you're the problem. But I remember reading those, and you're starting to add them up, and you're like doing the tallies, and you're like, this person ate like 1,200 calories in the day and did
Calories, like nothing. Yeah.
did hours of training. This seems wrong. And I'm sure it was wrong. I'm sure it was very inaccurate reporting on both sides.
Right. I think there's two sides to the story with those. I think it's that there is just completely inaccurate. It's what they thought they ate or wished they ate in a day or
Mm-hmm.
planned to eat, except then they also had two bowls of cereal after and they
Mm-hmm.
grabbed, they snuck in that loaf of bread with their
Exactly.
salad, like that's what they planned, but not actually what happened.
Yeah.
Or maybe it is what they ate, but like their portions were like astronomical,
Massive. Yeah.
that's
It was a
massive. I've
fish.
seen
Yeah.
that. Like it was like it was a whole fish. And or that is really how they ate, and that's why, you know, diet culture and all the issues. And, I know that women for sure over the past 20 years have had the unfortunate experience of Reds and female athlete triad.
Mm-hmm.
And men are getting that too and had that and just limited their potential. How many athletes could have been great or excelled or extended their
Yeah.
careers but didn't because they were, eating their little bowl of oatmeal and berries
Exactly.
after their
And
17-mile ride, right?
yeah, yeah. And the extending the career, I think, is the most interesting thing, because it's not to
Yes.
say that didn't, like, clearly for some of them, that worked for a short period, right? Like,
And it
unfortunately,
can for a short period for some people.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I've seen that with a lot of like young women athletes in the last decade that I've been, kind of in this scene. You see a lot of them come and they're in for a few years. And then between stress fractures and autoimmune flare ups that suddenly happen and
Mm-hmm.
gut issues that suddenly happen, and the fact that we're not kind of we're just going with like, oh yeah, that just happened.
Just
It has
happened.
no relation whatsoever to this kind of
Yeah.
corrosive diet culture that we've been living with.
Right. Right.
But yeah, the number of young women who've dropped out of sport or, had their careers pretty much cut off because of that, like, it's staggering. And you see them and they're not, like, there's a lot of them that aren't doing really anything anymore. Like, they've had to go down to, they walk and that's their activity. And like, that's their maximum right now. And that's so,
Yeah.
so sad.
And I think, too, there's a lot of athletes that end up stopping sport, quitting, and it might not even, sometimes it's a big injury and sometimes it's not, but it's just like the burnout. And I do think that, a lack of nutrition and fuel can contribute to the burnout as well. And I think that's another like reason that you and I are passionate about keeping girls in sport. It's not like stay in sport as long as you can, but it's like do it and enjoy it, because it's fun being our age. It's fun to still be an athlete and still be in sport. It's fun.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like keep doing it for as long as you can, as long as it brings you joy. Like if it doesn't bring you joy anymore, that's fine. But like it has so much potential to continue to bring you joy for many, many years to come. And
Yeah.
and that I think that's another reason to keep wanting to fuel yourself well.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Wow. So gosh, so much we talked about, so much still to talk about. Maybe we can backtrack a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just being like becoming a writer, an author. Was that something that you studied in college, and then like just as in college you were then, going after the boy, that starting the Iron Man, and now you're like, okay, I want to write about cycling and fitness and nutrition, because that's like, you've been featured in so many magazines, writing your own books now with your own publishing company and things like that. So like, can you kind of just tell us a little bit about like your love of writing and how you went down that path?
Oh yeah. I mean, if I wasn't an athlete as a kid, I was a writer as a kid. I think I was 2 years old and I told my mother I was going to be a writer. So that was a non-negotiable. That was always going to happen. Now, I never thought I'd be writing about sport. That seemed very outside of
Yeah.
what I would do. I actually started when I was in senior year of high school. I sort of scammed my way into an internship at the now defunct fashion magazine Elle Girl. So it was like Elle magazine, but for teens.
Yeah.
I sort of like lied and told them I was in college and like applied for an internship, and then they offered it to me and I was like, cool. So I finished senior year in like a few months. Can I start then? And luckily they were like, yeah, sure. So I was actually working there until they folded. So I was still like a freshman in college working like for this fashion magazine. They unfortunately closed down. And luckily that kind of like was at the same time I was starting to get really into cycling. And this is like a very long-winded story, but I was in a sports journal or science journalism class. And we had to technically send a pitch to a publication during that class. So I was a newfound, triathlete runner, and I was experiencing a lot of gut issues, as you might when you drink 2 liters of Mountain Dew and, survive on like college food and whatnot, and are trying to do these big miles from zero. Again, could not run a mile until I was 20. So this is a very new thing for me. And I'm like, why does my stomach hurt? This seems weird. So my first ever published article was about irritable bowel syndrome and the triathlete, and it was in Triathlete magazine.
Wow.
So just talking about poop. It was great. The next one I did was actually
You're like, Mom, Dad, look what I did.
Yeah, exactly. And the next one I did was like the anatomy of the sports bra. And it was all about just like the issues of like bouncing and fit and like how to find a sports bra that like works and what you should be doing in a dressing room. So I went straight to the weird niche topics in sport, which eventually led me to writing for Cyclocross magazine. And my first book was about cyclocross, which is like the nichest kind of cycling you can possibly be into.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just kind of, it went on and on from there. Like I kind of found writing about cycling was my thing.
Yeah.
I did a nutrition book called Fuel Your Ride that was all cycling nutrition. And as per I clearly like talking about weird stuff. So I actually wrote a book called Saddle Sore, a women only guide to you and your bike. That's all about your nether regions and the bike. Because when I started riding, and this is another issue, like why, you don't have as many girls and women in cycling. We don't get a lot of intel about some of the nuances of cycling gear and equipment. So the number of women I talk to that are like, oh, you're not supposed to go like numb down there when you ride, or like even I didn't know what bike shorts were. I did my first like half Ironmans. I did so many races wearing like those old Sophie gym shorts. Just like, cuffed up a couple times, as you do.
This is what we wore at that. Yeah, we just wore Sophie gym shorts all the time. Yeah.
No one
rolled over
me.
3 to 6 times. Roll them over. Yeah.
No one told me that bike shorts with like a pad in them were a thing until I got on a team and they just like tossed me a team kit. And I was like, what are these? Like, this is weird.
Yeah.
And even then, no one told me don't wear underwear with them. Like, just no one.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah. See?
Oh, wait, I still didn't know that.
Yeah. Big thing.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I learned something. All right.
Yeah.
It's just like what? Less friction?
Yeah.
Or?
So the chamois is designed to be antimicrobial. So it's actually meant to like trap bacteria and sweat and all the gross stuff. So you wear underwear, you're actually kind of like rendering it fairly pointless other than as like a little bit of pad. And also, like the shape of it is actually designed to like go outside, like onto your thighs. So you prevent the friction. So if you're wearing underwear, you're actually adding to the friction because now you've added like a layer that's like scraping against each other. So PSA out there to all cyclists, no underwear with our bike shorts.
Thank you. Well, and so, you're saying like, you wrote about some like obscure things or whatever, but it is so needed because let me tell you something. Again, I think we have a lot more female athlete role models today in 2024 than ever before. But for me growing up, I had 2 older sisters who were also athletic, but, 3 girls. We eventually had a younger brother. But anyways, I'm just saying that sports growing up, my dad was invested in us girls doing sports. So my dad was the one leading us in that. And he was actually a cyclist. still loves road cycling.
Nice.
He did his first running marathon when I was in high school, which led to a career. Many people have heard me speak on this podcast about my dad being a great runner, but he was actually a cyclist first. And when I was 12, he bought me a bike, a road bike, which is a gorgeous yellow bike. And I went out on a 30-mile ride up and down a gorge, and I crushed it with him. And I loved it, and I crushed it. And he got so excited that his girl was going to be a biker, that his girl was going to be a cyclist. And he went out and he bought me, the special clip-in shoes. He bought me the shorts with the pads. He bought me a singlet. And he was ready the next weekend to take me out again. And maybe I went on a few more rides with him, but I got too self-conscious. I felt awkward in the shorts. I felt weird when he was trying to fit me on the seat because I was 12 or 13 and it just felt weird. My dad seeing how the crotch of the bike fit for me. It was too awkward. It was so awkward. And so I stopped and then he kept asking me you want to go on a ride this weekend? Because he was so excited and I just kind of stopped. Aww. And so I think this kind of ties, I know it breaks my heart now when I think about that because my dad is I love my dad. He's one of my biggest role models, especially in life and especially as it comes to sport. He's given me so much. I ran my first marathon ever with my dad. I just thank him for so much and I feel so guilty now that I did that
I have to call him after this.
I feel so guilty that I did that to him. He got so excited about me biking and I just got embarrassed. But this ties back into where this conversation started. When I was 12, 13, I felt too uncomfortable. Here I had this amazing athletic potential. It's something to share with my dad and I just stopped. I just gave up on it because I felt uncomfortable in the biking shorts and the positioning of the bike seat felt weird to me. And I just gave up.
So awkward. And also if you think about now, okay, if your dad wasn't in cycling, imagine how much more awkward it would have been if he took you into a bike shop and you have this 17-year-old boy who has learned nothing about bike fit, knows nothing about talking to women, and he's the one trying to fit you and adjust the saddle under your bum.
Yeah.
This is the experience that we have. So it's no wonder that
it's no wonder.
We feel so uncomfortable and awkward. And there's so many tangents we could go on about why that is ludicrous, but that is just that's facts. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable, and this is why a lot of girls don't do it, or they get there and they're oh, I don't like this. And
right.
It's actually funny. There are some bike shops now. I know Trek has it where they've actually developed, and on one hand I'm robots are taking over the world and I hate this, but they now have these screen things.
But it's also
iPads.
Really cool.
It's super cool. So they have these iPads and you stand in front of them and they actually measure you as you're standing on this mark. And then it can suggest what size bike and a rough fit to it. So, okay, the saddle should be this height. And I think that's actually really fantastic because it really does take a level of awkwardness out of it and make the process just so much more comfortable for, I was just talking at a bike shop a couple of weeks ago, which is where I saw this thing. And I was talking to teen girls and they were all over this thing. They were all lining up to try it and thought it was the coolest. Yeah. And as I'm looking around the shop, I'm these guys in here are super nice. The men who were in the shop were lovely.
Yeah.
But as a 14-year-old, if one of them had come over and been here, I'll help you sit, get on this bike and I'll help you. I'd be so uncomfortable. I'd just expire on the spot. So that would be it. Just done.
Yeah. And that's why your saddle sore book and anatomy of a sports bra, it really is so important. I mean, and I'm even when you said the anatomy of a sports bra, I'm and here's another thing. As a more somebody who was a little bit more of a sports girl, I wasn't into fashion. I didn't like to go shopping. I still don't know how to get properly fitted bras. For every bra I put on, I'm I don't know, it doesn't fit.
Hey.
It just doesn't work. So I actually do have some good sports bras now. But anyways, it's just these are things that are important if you want to participate in sport as a girl or a woman. These things are important. So we need to talk about it. We need to have resources for it. We need to make it more comfortable.
Exactly.
And
it's funny. I was just interviewing this ultrarunner last week, Stephanie Case, who's doing some amazing work. She's a humanitarian rights lawyer and an ultrarunner for North Face, and started this organization called Free to Run, which is just fantastic. But what we were saying is we are talking about like gender equity in sport and, okay, now we have some even prize purses coming out or, okay, now we're getting the same payout for finishing this race and stuff. And she's like, yeah, but the barrier to entry is still so much higher for girls and women to get into sport. There's just so much more like we need to kind of like work on outside of just, okay, great, it's an equal payout. You're not done yet. We're not just good now.
Right. And that's where I can just see the impact of these books as girls are reading your books and the books of the other authors that you're bringing on board to Strong Girl Publishing. And just I can see that impact for our future. Because as I said, too, I already know we have so many more positive, female athlete influences today than we did 20 years ago. And so like books like this, young girls reading these books, turning into the athletes themselves, turning into moms of athletes in the future. Like, it's just going to be great.
Exactly. Yeah. Assuming we can keep them in sport. And that's where, someone like you comes in where you're actually helping them like understand the fueling element. Because again, this is just not stuff that we get taught. So
yeah.
It's a good multi-pronged approach we've taken here.
We sure have. And we focused mostly on your books and being an author and stuff like that today. But, the other prong approach here is you mentioned, you as a coach and you also are the co-host of Consummate Athlete podcast as well, which has been going on for 8 years, you said. And that's, another just education, learning about all the things it takes with training and fitness and nutrition, just having these conversations. So thank you for your work there as well and just getting more information out to people.
Well, same to you. I'm so excited that we got to do this. And like we said, before we hit record, you have to come on the Consummate Athlete. We have to get into some of the stuff that you're talking about and that you're into. And
nutrition nuances.
We'll make that happen. Nutrition nuances.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, Molly, this was so fun. Thank you so much. Super excited for the future of Strong Girl Publishing and for all the books out there. So we're gonna include in the show notes just links to your website, where to get your books, because I want everybody listening to this podcast to go run out and get one or two that appeal to you. Oh, I have one more personal thing to share with you.
Oh.
As I shared with you that I didn't grow up as a reader, although I love writing, which is, I think, because I like talking and storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
I actually did theater growing up, so I love like stories. I just wasn't a reader. Anyways, 2024, we're only 1 month into it. I've read 3 books so far. I'm really proud of myself.
I'm proud of you.
I'm enjoying them.
That's exciting.
Yes. And I didn't even set it as a New Year's resolution. I feel like in the past I set New Year's resolutions of like read more books, and I just like haven't. It wasn't a New Year's resolution. It just like it's just happening. I'm just picking up good books.
I love it. That's how we ended up connecting. It's just now it's like in your sphere here.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm a reader now.
Mm-hmm. See, there we go. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been just such a blast. Love this conversation.
Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. I almost forgot to ask you a few more questions.
Oh, hit me.
That I ask every guest at the end of the podcast. If there's one food you could eat every single day for the rest of your life and never get sick of it, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. You know what? This is like a really odd one. I'm having like a real cinnamon raisin English muffin phase right now.
Very good.
Don't know why, but just, right now that.
Mm-hmm, very good. Do you like the cinnamon raisin with cream cheese combination?
I do. And only recently, though. Like, would not have said that a year ago. But yes.
Oh, okay. It's one of my favorite combinations.
So good.
Love it. What is your favorite sport to participate in?
Oh, trail running, easily.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. And how about as a spectator? What's your favorite sport to watch and cheer on?
Oh, cyclocross by a million miles.
Yeah. It's really crazy, that sport.
It's so fun.
I get quite nervous, actually.
It is very high stress. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay, and then final question. If there's a female athlete out there that you want to give a shout out to for any reason, just being inspiring, a role model, and she can be well known or in your personal life, who would it be and why?
Oh man, this is This is so hard. There's so many women I know. Okay, I'm gonna go Katarina Nash, who is one of the best cyclists. She started as a cross country skier from the Czech Republic, came over here, cross country skier, Olympian, then got into cycling, mountain biker, cyclocross racer, still racing. She's been racing for decades now, still could destroy me on the bike. And I love her so much.
Shout out to Katarina Nash for being just a badass female athlete. So thank you, Molly, for all that you do, for all that you are continuing to do. Loved connecting with you. And yeah, head on over to Strong Girl Publishing website, get some of her books, get the Shred series, get Saddle Sore if you need to learn about that. Read your articles online, tune into the Consummate Athlete podcast, and stay tuned here on the Female Athlete Nutrition podcast for more.
Perfect. Thanks.
Well, everybody, thanks for listening. I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, if you are a true fan of female athlete nutrition, then I would love if you could support our podcast by spreading the word. Share a review on your listening channel, give us 5 stars. It really helps get the word out and get the show more views to positively impact others. Also, you can support the podcast by joining our Patreon. Head to patreon.com/femaleathletenutrition to consider a donation, or even better, join our membership where you get extra monthly content and perks. We don't want you to simply listen alone. We want you to be a part of a community and a movement of fierce, fit, and fueled female athletes. So patreon.com/femaleathletenutrition is where you can do exactly that, learn more, and join. A huge thanks to our affiliates and partners as well. Once again, Prevenix, Inside Tracker, Orgain, Practice Better, Jen and Carrie. Please go check them out, and their links in the show notes where you can get deals and discounts. Last, be sure that you do more than just listen. If you need help with fueling, it's time to take action. Head to my website to learn more. You can either book a free call with me to learn more about our coaching programs and how we can work directly with you, whether it's the fast track or otherwise. Or you can take our online self-study course, Female Athlete Nutrition. You can literally sign up and gain access right now. You can explore our downloadable products, including the Red S Recovery Guide, High Iron Fueling Guide. Or if you are a coach of a team, check out our brand new Coaches Toolkit for teams. You can also just learn more. We have a blog, a Red S quiz to see if Red S is affecting you. If you need help, I want you to get help fast. Too many girls and athletes struggle with nutrition, but you don't have to any longer. You can rise up with the power of nutrition, take action today in any of these avenues, and become fierce, fit, and fueled. Links in the show notes, and we'll see you next time.